You're listening to the Sass Says podcast. I'm your host, Christy Rocha, also known as Sass. I identify as a woman, a wife, and a mother. That should tell you a lot already. And over the last few years, I've learned the value of talk therapy. I have seen how my inner work not only enhances my own well-being, but also my marriage, my parenting, my relationships. And in fact, you wouldn't be hearing this right now if it weren't for the work I've done. My mission is to debunk the misconceptions and stigmas around what therapy is and who it's for. Let's normalize working on our mental health and seeking help when needed. We've all heard of self-care, self-help, and self-love, but do you often wonder how to actually make it all happen? I do. You'll hear strategy-based conversations with professionals, as well as inspiring and validating stories from women who are just like you and me. Think of this podcast as the weekly therapy sessions you didn't know you needed, with a dash of sass, a lot of vulnerability, and me, relentlessly asking, but how? Hello. Welcome to the show. McCall Dulkys is on the show today. McCall is the founder and principal designer of Interiors by McCall. She is a mom of 3, including twins, and a basketball wife. Home has always been a relative term for McCall, as she and her family of 5 lived in various countries across Europe due to her husband's professional basketball career. While abroad, sharing photos on social media of her investment property renovation, McCall began helping family and friends redesign their homes, which led to her virtual design practice and then eventually to her full-service luxury design firm upon arriving home to the U.S. When McCall is not designing homes, I love this, she works as an underpaid assistant to her 3 toddlers and enjoys cooking, traveling, and of course, watching basketball. So today, McCall shares her experience living overseas for 10 years while her husband played basketball, which included the birth of her twins in Spain. Yeah, she discusses the challenges of motherhood, including postpartum depression and anxiety, and the pressure to appear perfect on social media. McCall also talks about building a community while living abroad and the difficulties she faced in forming true friendships. The conversation also touches on balancing responsibilities in a modern parenting relationship and the importance of self-care and mental health. All right, here's McCall. Hey, McCall. So nice to meet you. Thanks for being here with me today.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. It's an honor. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, not that this is anything new really, but as soon as my mom interviewed you, I got an earful on the phone of like, oh my gosh, you have to McCall, you have to talk to McCall. McCall has a great story and blah, blah, blah. And I say not that it's anything new in that my mom's a talker, but
Right.
she
She's
doesn't
awesome.
always call me about people. So
Aw,
this is
she's
very,
great.
yeah, you
Yeah,
made an impression.
that's awesome. I loved being on her show. So she told me all about you too. So I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. I did listen to your episode on her show, but I'm certain my listeners have not yet listened
Right.
to it. So why don't you start by just sharing a little bit about your story? You can start wherever feels good for you right now as far
Sure.
as why we're here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm McCall Dulkys. I am a mom of 3 and an interior designer. So I'm currently living with my family in Sacramento, California. My husband is a coach here for the Sacramento Kings. And prior to this is his second year coaching, but before coaching, he played overseas for 10 years. So I had my kids overseas. My daughter is 5, and I have twin 3-year-old boys who I gave birth to when he was playing in Spain.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So yeah, finally kind of being in the States is like been a crazy experience for me after 10 years there. But yeah, I think especially with my daughter, I struggled so much being a first time mom. Um, and kind of everything I felt, I thought was this normal, like rite of passage that you had to go through when you're becoming a mom. But yeah, it was paralyzing to me, just that immediate shock of what a massive, life change you go through and being responsible for someone else and you kind of realize how selfishly you got to live your life before kids. You just kind
Yeah.
of woke up and everything was on your own terms, and that just, was out the window. So for the first time, I struggled so much, feeling like motherhood didn't come natural to me or didn't come easy to me, and kind of seeing my friends with newborns and feeling like, God, they seem, to be doing so much better than me at this. And that was so tough, and I don't think I realized until, I mean, I definitely knew I didn't feel okay,
Mhm.
but I didn't realize how deep in I was until my second pregnancy, where, after having my twins, I was like, wow, I actually don't feel the way I felt before. And it was kind of
Mhm.
then that the light bulb went off of like, oh, wow, I definitely struggled with, postpartum depression, anxiety. And I just really thought it was this normal part of motherhood that, you get through this part and then it gets better. And I had no idea that I could have gotten help at the time, and it just could have been a way different experience for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought of a I don't know if it's a meme or it was like a tweet recently that I saw from Ryan Reynolds. He said, I'm paraphrasing. He's like, never been happier. My kids have never what is it? It's like something like I'm the happiest I've ever been since I've had my kids, excluding, of course, the time before I had my kids.
Right, right.
Like, it was like something like that, like
Yep,
something just like you don't realize what you had until it's
yep.
gone.
That's what I say to people that have kids. I'm like, isn't it the best and the worst thing that's
Yeah.
ever happened to you? Like, it's terrible to say, but I'm like, it is absolutely the best. And then, like, it's also the worst. Like, just
Yeah.
being honest, it's the worst too. So,
Yeah, totally. And I just appreciate so much hearing someone else say it,
right.
and this
Feels
is
not so
something
bad.
yeah, like,
Yep.
and I feel like these types of, sentiments and conversations are happening more often, but there's still, I think, mostly because of social media and everything, like, there is still this pressure to be this, like, cookie cutter, perfect looking, have it all together mom, and that's a whole other topic, but what I really related to what you said is looking around and going, "How come everyone's doing this better than I am?" And I think we share this that when you grow up and things kinda come easily to you or you just know you can put the work in and it gets easier for
Right.
you, motherhood is not that.
Yep.
And it's really jarring. It's really unsettling, actually.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. I always, was someone who did pretty well in school. Are we I grew up in a super academic home, so, you did the work, you got the grades, you just in your sports or extracurriculars, you tried your best, you did your best, you practiced. And motherhood is just one of those, like, you're just thrown in the trenches without any real, like, guidance, and you're just kind of forced to figure it out. But it's nothing that comes with a handbook or that can just you can just be good at. It's not the case. So that was something that was so difficult for me to understand.
Yeah. Okay, so I wanna go back. You lived overseas for 10 years? Is
Yep.
that
Yep.
okay. Go back to the beginning of that 10 years. Was it like 2 feet in, we're going, this is great, I know exactly what I'm signing up for, and I can picture my life? Or was this, like, impulsive, I don't know what I'm getting into, but I'm doing it? Like, what
Yeah,
was the time period leading up to that, and how did you make the choice to
yeah.
jump on board?
I met my husband really early on in college, like freshman year. So we had been together for 4 years at this point, and we knew
Okay.
we were going to get engaged. And yeah, he just talked about, like, there's a small chance I'd get to go to the NBA, but most likely I'd go play overseas somewhere. And would that be something you'd be interested in doing? And I studied abroad in college. I traveled a ton, so I was like, yeah, sounds great. But I think I kind of put any sort of career aspirations that I had on hold to do that
Mhm.
with him. And I was okay with it at the time because it was something, it felt like an opportunity that would be really fun for us as we ended up getting engaged right before I moved over there. So something for us to do to kind of jumpstart our life together. So yeah, I would say it was pretty all in. I didn't hesitate too much. I don't know that I thought we'd be over there for 10 years or that I'd have kids over there. I thought it
Yeah.
would be like a shorter stay probably. But yeah, I ended up loving it, and it shaped so much of my love for design that I eventually, got to use to start my business. So it absolutely all happened for a reason. But yeah, I would say we kind of jumped in and just knew it was something we both wanted to do and to do together, and a fun adventure for us.
Hmm. Going abroad, only really knowing your husband, I assume.
Yep, yep,
And now he's playing basketball. He's not like going to a 9 to 5, right? He's
right.
traveling a lot. He's away a lot. Did you find a way to build a community? Like, how did you get through sort of what I imagine could be often like kind of lonely or just, I don't know, like, how did you transition?
Yeah, it was so different every year because mainly he was signing these 1 year contracts. So we were
Oh
moving,
my gosh. Yeah.
every August we were moving. And it really depended on who you got on your team that year. Like
Mm,
typically wherever you played that country, it would be guys from that country making up the team. And then you'd have anywhere from like 2 to 4 Americans. They had like rules about how many foreign players you could have. So
okay.
you were kind of at the grace of whoever you ended up on a team with.
Mm,
So, and that really shaped so much of, how your year was going to go. I lived in some places that maybe didn't have a lot going on, but we had awesome teammates who had wonderful wives that I'm still really close with. So it just made the year so fun. And then we had other years where we might have been in a much better city, but he didn't have, there weren't, I think I had 1 year where there were no other American wives and none of the
mm.
foreign wives spoke English. So it was kind of me and the guys all the time, which I grew up with older brothers, so I'm pretty comfortable in that setting. I get along really well with guys, so it was okay. But I mean, I definitely missed that female friendship and camaraderie. So, but yeah, it changed so much every year depending on where we were. And eventually I got better at kind of putting myself out there, which you really have to. I mean, these women, especially when you're in their country and, they
Yeah.
might not be comfortable speaking English, you're kind of the one that really has to put themselves out there to them to try to form those friendships. So it changed a lot year to year, but it was challenging for sure trying to build any sort of community or, friend group when language was a barrier. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was tough for sure.
Yeah. Did putting yourself out there come naturally to you?
I don't know. I'm kind of like you see those weird things on Instagram, like introvert. I'm an introverted extrovert. I feel like I
Yeah, I feel you.
like I like to socialize with people, but I wouldn't say I'm like super comfortable in those situations.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was really, I think the first year we were overseas, we actually went to Lithuania, where my husband's from.
Mm,
So I had my sister-in-law living in the same city as us. So that was great that I had her and she introduced me to her friends. But my husband had just played for like the Lithuanian national team for the Olympic qualifiers. So coming over, basketball is huge there. So he was like this celebrity, and everyone was so interested in how he was moving back to Lithuania after being in the States and bringing, his American fiance. And they
yeah.
would, have us in newspapers and
I was gonna say page
interviews and
6.
tours of our home.
Yeah.
And it was just like, kind of shocking experience. And I
Oh.
think a lot of the like local women there didn't love me for that reason. And
Mm,
they do feel territorial of like, why isn't he with a Lithuanian woman, So there was a
yeah.
lot of dealing with that kind of weird vibes, I guess, from the other women there. But I ended up making a couple girlfriends that first year that I'm still really close with. But yeah, it was really hard for me to put myself out there in the first few years, but then I just kind of forced myself. I'm like, hey, people might not be walking up to me introducing myself. Like it's my job. I need to suck it up and try to be a little more social and get out there and make
Yeah.
connections with people. So I think after that first year, I was also a lot more conscious of I want new women wherever we are to feel comfortable around me. So I'm going to go up to them
Mm,
and I'm going to go out of my way for them because I think I really wish someone did that for me in the beginning.
yeah.
So I was definitely conscious about that moving forward, that like I need to make them feel comfortable and let them know we're all in the same boat here, and let's support one another. Let's be, build that community, and let's make, our time here a lot better by doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and the only I was going to share kind of where my context of asking was coming from, and I'm gonna put a pin in that for a second because of what you just said. My only experience kind of trying to picture this whole scenario is through, like, pop culture, reality TV of, like, you know yeah, like, Basketball Wives, like, it's a thing, like, you have your or I'm gonna ask you, is it really a thing the way, like, media wants to make it in the sense that you have this lifestyle that not a lot of people can relate to. Is it as glamorous? Is it as fun? Is it as meaningful? Like, I don't know. I'm thinking of
No,
like
it is
all the
definitely way less glamorous and way less fun than anything. Yeah, I mean,
you know what I'm saying though? Like you've seen like all
yes,
those reality
yeah,
shows and like even some of the housewives have like professional athlete husbands who it's like, "Oh, you don't get it." Like, I don't know.
yeah, it's definitely way less glamorous and way less fun than anyone puts on. And I try to be very real about it just because I'm never one to, to put on a front. But yeah, it's hard and it's super isolating. You're
Yeah.
by yourself a lot. The guys' schedules are so tough. Yeah, it's not, it's very, very few parts about it are actually glamorous and fun. So yeah,
Like anything
it's a
else we're seeing that's
yeah,
like the snapshot, right? Like
yes,
the
absolutely.
highlight reel of the
Yep. But
lifestyle.
anyone who's follows me on my personal Instagram sees, my kids rolling down the stairs at the basketball games and me being a solo mom for 2 weeks while he's on a trip. So
Mm,
there's no sugar coating on my social media. People
yeah.
know, no, it's not easy.
Yeah. How, at what point in those 10 years did you get pregnant for the first time?
Um, I think, let's see, I had my daughter. So probably we lived overseas 5 years before I got
Okay.
pregnant. Yeah, pregnant. It's 5 or 6, maybe 6 years. Yeah. So we had our fun, just the two of
Yeah.
us for a while. And then I got pregnant with my daughter when we lived in Spain. And I was supposed to deliver her in Turkey. And my husband tore his ACL when I was like 8 months pregnant. So we flew
God.
home to the States and I had her in Florida. So it was kind of nice to have that first like delivery experience in Florida
Yeah.
with English speaking doctors. Like, what a luxury.
Oh my gosh.
And then I ended up having my twins in Spain. And I was like, wow, I'm super glad I'd already done this before because there was like zero communication between the
Wow.
doctors. I mean, everyone was super friendly and helpful, but just the language barrier. And it was a way different experience. So I was glad that I had a little bit of knowledge under my belt from the first time around.
Yeah. I'm imagining, especially some people that I know personally who are gonna hear this, and everything you said is just gonna give them so much anxiety as far as, like, having to think about themselves in that situation. Like,
Yeah.
was that for you what do you attribute your ability to cope with that and just sort of like get through it and deal like even the thought of delivering in another country I think there would be a lot of women who would just flat out refuse to do it
Yeah.
so what is it about you that says not only am I going to do it but I like this is happening and I don't know.
Yeah, I think I've always kind of had that survivor mentality. A lot is probably stems from my childhood. I grew up in an alcoholic family. My mom was an alcoholic up until I was in middle school. She got sober when I was 12. But yeah, I had an alcoholic mom I was raised by. My dad left. So we had a chaotic childhood,
Mm,
absolutely. So I think I always just kind of had this survivor mentality of I can push through, I can do it. But yeah, that's absolutely where it stems from. And I think I just try as I've gotten older to there was a lot of women that I'd meet who would be like they'd fly back to the States to give birth and I'm kind of like
mm,
listen, there's babies being born all over the
yeah.
world and in different countries. And when my second pregnancy it was twins, people would say to me like, well, you're not delivering them in Spain, like overseas, would you? I'm like, I know this is hard for you guys to realize, but they have twins in Spain too. Like, this is not going to be the doctor's first rodeo here. Like, it's all good. But yeah, I definitely have that survivor mentality in me from early on in my life that's always kind of helped me just push through uncomfortable situations.
Mhm, mhm. And I know from what you shared with me prior to this in the intake that, and I wanna make sure you have a chance to share that sharing that you grew up with an alcoholic mom, your dad left, like, you still had what you described as a really nice childhood. Like, I think people hear that and think, "Oh, things must have been devastating," but for you, it wasn't necessarily. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, there's such a stigma around alcoholism, that people struggling with addiction can't be like functional human beings, and that's just not the case for so many people.
Or loving human beings,
Yeah, my
right?
mom, right, my mom included. She was the mom in my friend group that everyone loved, everyone wanted to be around, always planning fun things. Our house was the house growing up that, like, I had two older brothers. We would just have a house full of kids all the time. And my mom was so supportive, so involved. And I remember being surprised. I was 12 years old, and her and my dad sat me down and said that she was going to go into rehab. And I remember feeling almost surprised about it. Now, looking back as an adult, I see so many things that I'm like, wow, that, of course wasn't normal and all the signs were there. But when you're around it and that's how you were raised, you just think that's normal.
Yeah,
So, because she was always around, everyone loved her. She was a great mom. I, I I remember just being surprised, like, what do you mean something's wrong with her? Like, what?
yeah.
And now that, I'm an adult, and even when I grew up and went to college, I was like, oh wow, there was so many things there that I just thought were normal that
Yeah,
were not. But yeah, she was still a great mom, and that is such a stigma that alcoholics face, is that they're all, no one can get through the day. They're waking up drinking all day, and it looks
jerks.
so different for
Yeah.
so many people. And she was dying, and I had no idea because she
Wow.
was still so able to like function.
Wow.
So
Yeah. Now that you are a mom, what do you take from your childhood from the point of view of your mom and go, these are the things I want to recreate and these are the things I want to do differently?
yeah, I think just that all the things that she instilled in us, respect for others, trying your best academically, loving one another, being supportive to friends and family members, that those are all things, that I want my kids to feel too. And just the way she loved us, she was always, so loving and poured so much of herself into us. So those are absolutely things I'll take forward. I think for me, what's difficult looking back is I was forced to grow up so quickly with, her alcoholism, with my dad leaving, with all of these like real adult heavy, you know topics to deal with. I was kind of thrown into so much of it and probably involved more with it than I needed to be, that I'm
Mhm,
super conscious of. I want my kids to be kids, and I don't ever want to drag anything, from that, me and my husband will ever have going on, or any adult sort of issues into their life. Like, let's like kids be kids. And
mhm,
I grew up so fast, and I missed out on so much of my childhood. I was forced to be an adult so early on that I definitely don't want that for my kids. But I mean, in our house, still amongst all the chaos, we had so much love and support from her that that's, absolutely something, I hope my kids feel from me too.
mhm. How old were your kids when you moved back to the US?
So my boys were just shy of 2, like a few months shy of 2,
Okay.
and my daughter, yeah, 4.
Okay, so they probably have some recollection, but not a lot of living abroad.
Yeah, my daughter has a little. The boys get like kind of confused, because we lived in Spain, but like their grandparents live in Lithuania, so they get that confused. Like, do we speak Spanish? Do we speak Lithuania? They're like,
Oh, that's
there's
funny.
a lot of confusion over, like, we know we lived somewhere else, but we're confused because our grandma lives. So there's a lot of confusion in there, but they kind of remember like little things about it.
Yeah. And do they what is their awareness of the difference in your lifestyle now, like with your husband being away for, like you said, maybe 2 weeks at a time, like how do you cope with that as their mom, and how do you talk to them about that?
We're so lucky this year because we have two other families on the team, two other coaches who one of them is my college best friend.
Oh my gosh,
Um, our we met because our husbands lived together at Florida State. They were roommates and teammates playing
it's
basketball there.
amazing.
So
Yeah.
we've been best friends since college. So we have kids the exact same age. And
Mhm.
then we have another wife on the team who has kids our exact same age. So our kids all go to school together. So, we go into school and everyone, oh, daddy's left, for a couple weeks. So
Oh my
they
god,
not
that's so
only do
nice.
us as
Yeah.
wives have that support with one another, the kids have it. And that makes it so much easier. And all the teachers know, like we've got three girls in this class. Their dads are gone for 2 weeks, and they'll say to us, "Oh, the girls, we could tell they were a little off today." But just them having that too, where they don't feel it normalizes it for sure, where they're like, oh, their dad's gone for 2 weeks. So we all can kind of share, especially with us moms too. We get to share so much of the struggle together and kind of have those vulnerable conversations of like, man, this has been a tough like road trip. I'm struggling. We're really good at about picking up the phone and calling one another and being vulnerable and having those conversations to normalize it a little bit and just kind of share that, look, hey, I'm in it too. It kind of goes in waves, and when we're all having a tough time, we're in it together, so at least it's shared
Yeah.
chaos. Yep.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, obviously I love that for you, but hearing about the kids is just it's amazing. That's
Yeah.
truly something really special that, like
Yeah.
you said, they can go in and, you know, there's other kids that are in the same situation. It feels
Right.
like that's really lucky. Um, and this kind of touches on the thing that I was putting a pin in from earlier, and perhaps me asking this won't mean anything to you because it's kind of silly, but you know, e when I hear you talk about some of the women and friends that you made overseas, now you have, these wives here that you're close with and pick up the phone and call, like, I am not a person that has ever felt like I've struggled with friendship in my life. I've always had from birth, I have a best friend that I'm still friends with. And along the way, I'm always kind of been like a buddy person. Like I'm not
Hmm.
really had like the huge groups of friends, but particularly in motherhood, and of course the pandemic added to it, but my friendships have changed so much because we're all at such different places in our lives that I'm really struggling now to find people that I can connect with and have that, like, hey, I'm picking up the phone. This is really hard today. And it's not because those friends wouldn't answer and listen, but they're not in the same place as I am. So it's
Yep.
not as meaningful. And I don't know. I don't know that I have a question. I'm surprised that it's been this hard. And I maybe wonder just anything that comes to mind for you and in hearing me say all of that.
I think it was hard for me in the beginning, for sure, with my first. And I think a lot of that is I didn't want to put myself out there and be vulnerable and say, hey, I'm struggling, because they all seem to kind of have it together.
Mm,
So I didn't feel comfortable sharing that, like, hey, I'm struggling. But I think in my second pregnancy, I just felt like, wow, I need to like feel that connection. And I think with my girlfriends too, a lot of them have kids the same age, and they were all willing to share their struggles more when I did open up to them.
mm,
So I
mhm.
think a lot of times we might feel guarded as to like, we don't want to share that we're struggling until someone else makes that first move. So that for me, I'm an open book with my friends, and I'm like, wow, today sucked. And
Yeah.
they feel more okay with being like, you know what, I yesterday was that day for me. And we might go off on different times, but we can be that support for one another and be like, listen, I was in that last week, I'm out of it this week, like you'll get through this. But I think you just have to be so vulnerable. And there's still those moms out there that I meet that are like, they act like everything is great and
Hashtag
easy. And
blessed.
I'm like, if that's really your life, then I absolutely love that for you. But that is not my life. And
Yeah.
are you and I going to like really connect and be able, I need women around me that are going to be vulnerable and honest about like how hard motherhood is. And if it's not hard for you, then I love that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just surround myself with women that can be vulnerable and want to have those conversations.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, and I've gotten better about it. Just, for a long time I wouldn't even like engage at all with
Yeah.
people. Like I was just like the girl, if you could picture like the girl in the subway with her headphones on and in her nose in a book, like do not talk to me. And I learned that that was a lot of because I had like a lot of shame around my body image that I was like just nobody interact with me postpartum because like this is not who I
Yeah.
am. Like I had a lot of
Right.
shame around that.
Yeah.
And now I've gotten better about it. And this is a little tangent, I guess, but the thing that I actually find that I struggle with now, and I'm trying to push through is the feeling of sort of this over structured culture of like kid play and friendship. Like I didn't grow up this way. I grew up with a friend that it was like, whose house are we going to? Yours or mine? And the moms just facilitated it and they were together anyway. Like I feel like I either get invited to like a formal birthday party now for a kid, or it's like a meetup at the park. And it's like it just feels like so rigid to
Yeah.
me. I don't that it stops me from doing it a lot of the time because I'm like, oh, my house isn't clean, or like, I'm not prepared to like host you with like
Right.
coffee and donuts. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I just want it to be like casual. I don't know. That's all, that's all of it.
Yeah, I think just letting go of I've let go so much here just because before this year, and having these families here that we're always hanging out with, I didn't have that previously. I didn't have
Mhm,
it last year. We were in Memphis for his first year coaching and I had like zero community there.
mhm.
So it's been like such a change for me and I'm like, wow, this is so much more enjoyable when you
Yeah.
have and yeah, I'll have, all their kids over. We'll have 8 kids at my house all the time. And I'm like, guys, you know me by now. I'm not cleaning up my house for your kids to come over and destroy it. So what you see, like,
Yeah,
feel
I
free to
know.
come on through, like, bring something. I'll have something. You bring something.
Yeah.
My house is a mess. It's going to stay a mess. Feel
Yeah.
free to call me a cleaning lady, but right now, this is what it looks like. So, yeah, I think just letting go of even caring whatsoever what other
Yeah.
moms might think about you and just knowing it's best for your kids and best for you to have some sort of community and like, look, come on over. My house looks like this. When you invite me over, feel free to not pick up your house. Like, let's
Yeah.
just be
Yeah.
there to have fun with each other and socialize and not care about impressing one another.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I know. I know. I overthink everything.
Yeah, I get
And
it. I get it.
I think a lot of that I like so much changed after like the lockdown. I
Yeah.
just,
Yep.
having a toddler and a newborn during that lockdown, I know you were in a similar boat and times 20 being overseas, I
Yeah.
think still. Um, it just the isolation started to feel normal.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And then coming out of it felt and like socializing felt very uncomfortable.
Yep.
Which is, like, so bizarre. Like, I was worked in sales, I was a bartender, like, I was not scared
Right.
of anything, like, I would walk up and talk to a stranger, and now it was like calling a friend that I've had for 15 years felt like,
Right. Yeah.
like,
No,
oh
I get,
my
I think
god.
we were all that way. And it was just this year being thrown into it of like, oh, I now live in the same city as one of my best friends. I haven't had
Yeah,
this since I was in college, 11 years ago. So,
yeah, yeah,
well, now 13, 14 years ago. Um,
whatever it is.
whatever, let's round down. Yeah, I hadn't had that in
Yeah.
so long that I'm like, wow, this is great. But yeah, it took a little bit to get used to for sure. You have to throw yourself back in and then eventually it feels normal. But
Mhm.
yeah, you're right. With the pandemic, I like just didn't want to leave the house for so long
I
after,
know.
like just becomes comfortable and
Yeah.
leaving with your kids feels like such a giant
Oh my god.
task that it's like, oh, how bad do I want to go to this place?
Yeah, yeah, just getting them in and out of the car seats is like
Yeah.
it's a workout.
Yeah.
Anyway, I wanted to ask you, and I know this could probably might be a weird way to preface it, but I'm not I'm not asking this for to try to like expose some sort of like dirty laundry. Just prefacing it by that. I know
Yeah.
that's not usually a good way to start something, but I just want you to know that that's not my intention. I have this year have read Fair Play it's this book called Eve Rodsky wrote it by it's called Fair Play. I recently read How Not to Hate Your Husband After Kids, and there's another one, and it's all about I can't remember the name of it right now, but they're all about sort of like dealing with modern parenthood, modern relationships with kids, where you have working parents, but mom is still taking a lot of the mental load on, and just sort of like really looking at who's doing what in the house, how it got to be that way, and how you sort of rebalance things
Yep.
if you desire to. And I prefaced it a little strange because I know the lifestyle you live, and so I'm asking more from the point of view of perspective. Like I read these things and I'm looking to like rebalance my house, and like my husband, he works but he's here all the time.
Right.
Like how do you cope with sort of being, not sort of, I'm sure you are, like how do you cope with being, the default parent, the parent that's usually always on, the parent who's running the house, but also running your business, also doing all the things. Like it feels like a lot to take on, and I'm curious how you do it and what you think of all that.
Yeah, it's I definitely struggle with that, especially because I'm like a big feminist. I'm like these men need to be,
Yeah.
sharing
Well, and
50% of the
I just
responsibility.
want to clear off a second. That's where it's coming from, like not wanting to air dirty laundry. Like I'm not
Right.
looking
Oh
for you to
yeah.
like bash your husband or bash your
Right, of
marriage.
course.
Like I just think it's a unique perspective that you have on this.
Yeah. And I definitely struggle with that because I do feel like I have to take on so much. It's super unequal the amount of work
Right.
that I have compared to him. And I think just knowing that it's something that we both agreed to,
Mm,
during the season, which is like October to we just started playoffs, so he could be done in 2 weeks or he could be done in 2 months, depending on
mhm.
how far it goes. But for a good 6 to 8 months of the year, like it is super unequal. And
Yeah.
he's gone all the time. Even when he's in town, he's not home. So I'm the default parent and, feels like a solo parent. And like, I'm like, I won't say single parent because it's very different than these women who don't have, financial or emotional help from their
Yeah.
husbands. So not at all comparing myself to that, but a solo parent, I'd say, to where they're not in the house, they cannot be in charge of anything. I
Mhm.
mean, just the schedule is so unpredictable that I can't even, if he's home and able to pick up the kids one day or drop them off, then that's like huge to me. So
Bonus.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's super super uneven, but it's something that we shared and we had conversations about, especially this season was so hard. Their schedule was so difficult at the beginning of the year. I really struggled. And he said to me, look, dude, what's the number one thing to me is my family. So if you're not happy with this, then like
Mm.
I can find another job.
Wow.
And yeah, I struggled in the beginning and I I don't really have an answer to except to say that it did get better. And I think it was more just me managing my expectations and just trying not to resent him because it's
Yeah.
not fair and it's not going to help him and it's not going to help me or our relationship if I'm resenting him. No good comes out of that.
Mhm.
But in the beginning, I struggled so much. But I think it helped me to hear him say that he would do something else if that, would make me happier, if that would be better for our family. So
Yeah.
I feel like it got better after that conversation, just knowing that nothing is more meaningful to him than to our family and to us being happy. And now I'm on such like a routine with them that like when he's in town, he slows me down.
Yeah.
Like it
I
takes me
can
longer
I
to get out of the house. Like my kids and I just have such like a routine of
yeah.
all the things we do before we leave that when he's here, they're kind of thrown off. I'm thrown off. I'm like, why am I late? And I had another adult in the house. Like,
Yeah.
why did that throw me off? But yeah, I got a lot better with it this year, but the beginning was definitely difficult. But just I think being able to be honest with him and he'll always say to me, I know this is hard. And he doesn't try to justify it to sugarcoat it to he's just lets me when I'm having a hard time and he's out of town, he lets me call and vent and he listens and I'm so sorry, you're going through this. And we just have those conversations, and he doesn't try to justify it. Oh, but like
Yeah.
he just, yeah, I hear you. It sucks. I'm
Yeah, he
sorry that you're
validates
going through
you.
that. And he validates it. And yeah, I've gotten a lot better with it, but it definitely comes and goes. It comes in waves. And some days I'm like, yeah, I could do this. And I feel like I get confidence when I'm like, wow, I just did, I think last March, he was home for like 2 days in the month of
Oh my
March.
god.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, wow, I just did 3 kids, 3 and 4 years old by myself for like 30 days this month. Like I can do anything. So
Yeah.
I think it gives me like validation of, wow, you can do this. And just having conversations with him and being honest. But yeah, we definitely struggle. But the off season, let me tell you, I plan on when he's done, like I'm on the next plane out, you're on. Like in the rare day that he gets a day off, I'm like, it's not your day off, it's your day on in the house. Like I'm out of here. So
Yeah.
just like I'm piecing out whenever possible, and it's your turn to take over. My time here is done.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, but the validation thing is critical, and I think a lot of partners underestimate how much just saying, "Wow, I can't imagine how difficult this is for you." Like, just saying that,
Right.
you don't really have to do a whole lot of there else because the reality is there's not much else you can do, right? So,
Yep.
you're doing the most by just acknowledging the struggle and acknowledging how much you are doing for the family. And I think it's also super important knowing that even if you wouldn't ever take it, that there is an out,
Right.
right? Like if it
Right.
ever got so to the point of like I'm crumbling, like you could pull out.
Yep.
Not of your marriage, but he could pull out of the job. I mean,
Yeah,
like
and just knowing that our family is more important to him
yeah,
than basketball, which like of course I knew that, but sometimes you have to hear that. And
totally.
just hearing him say that, it was like, okay. And it is something I signed up for and something I agreed to. And we had that conversation before. It was not a given. It was, hey, this is,
Mhm.
he loves basketball, and he thought, what else could I do? And ultimately that's his passion. And that's what he loves. And I know he wouldn't get that anywhere else.
Yeah.
So we decided together that, we could handle it. We would do it and see how it goes, at least for a few years, and give him a chance there. And if it ever got to the point where, we weren't happy, then he would change. So
Yeah. In starting your business, your design business, oh, that's a lot to take on. Like
it's a
you have
lot.
little
Yeah.
kids, you're
Yep.
by yourself a lot. Like what is some of your go-to strategies or just, advice on how like how do you stay sane? How do you do it all?
I wouldn't say I'm sane at all. First off, not
Fair
even
enough.
close. I'm not sane. I
Fair
try
enough.
to I try to outsource like any possible thing that I can.
Mhm.
My kids are finally in like full-time school this year, like
Oh, yes.
a 8:30 to 3:30 situation, and
Amazing.
just like
Yeah.
how massively that affected like my mental health, my ability to get anything done. I mean,
Mhm.
like when I got that initial, like when I saw the tuition schedule, I about had a heart attack. And my husband was like, there's no choice. You have to do this. And I'm so glad he did, because I was thinking like maybe I'll put him in like a 2 or 3 day a week thing,
Mhm.
not knowing like just how little he'd be around.
Mm.
And I mean, thank God that we did that, because I'm like, they're in school 8:30 to 3:30, so I work during that time. I also clean my house, do groceries, do laundry,
Mhm.
any appointments all have to fall within that.
Mhm.
So it's already not enough time. And here I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do with all this time, when they're
Yeah.
in school? And I'm like, oh no, I like, is there a Saturday, Sunday program we could add on? Like, but that has been like, that's seriously how I've survived. Same with, I mean, I'll get a cleaning. I don't have like a regular cleaning person, but occasionally I'm like, I don't have time for this. I call someone in, I'll
Yeah.
deliver groceries, anything that makes my life a little bit easier. If he's on like a really long road trip, I'll call a babysitter in on a Saturday, knowing like, okay, I'll be like just super overwhelmed by this last
Mhm.
Saturday. Like I'm going to go ahead and schedule someone to come in that day so I can go have some time for myself. So
Yeah.
just outsourcing like wherever, whenever possible.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, I it's like it's refreshing to hear that. I think that especially okay, I'll speak for myself. Going into motherhood, I just thought, you know, I'm going to be just capable of just like handling it all and doing it all and I would love help, but I don't really need it. And now
Yep.
it's like, "Oh my goodness, like no, give me all the babysitters, give me all of the school, give me all of the things because it's still not enough time. We're managing households, we have jobs, we have to somehow find a way to like take care of ourselves and work out and relax and
Yep.
see a friend. Like it's yeah, give me all the help."
Yeah, society has like put so much ridiculous pressure on new moms, and especially like so many of these like Instagram accounts that can be really helpful for navigating toddlers and children, but also so intense that you feel like, oh
Oh
my
my
God,
god, I
wait, we're
know.
not supposed to do that now. I didn't know. Like,
I know.
you cannot tell your kid you're proud of them anymore. Like,
I
that's a new
know.
one I read recently. I'm
Yep,
like, oh God, I got to write this down. There's so like, but just
yep.
so many things we're pushing on new moms to be this perfect, like you have to, gentle parenting, you have to you're introduce your kids to vegetables at this age. So if your toddlers aren't loving broccoli, if they're not sleeping through the night at 4 months old, if you put them in front of a screen, like, oh no, like you're doing that wrong, so
Yeah.
there's just like such an overload of you know quote unquote helpful
Like,
information on social media these
well-intentioned,
days. It's
but
well
yeah.
intentioned would be the
Yeah.
right word. And you just feel so overwhelmed with keeping up with it all. And it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw the proud thing now. It's like
I'm like,
instead of
wait, what? We can't tell our kids we're
yeah,
proud of.
no, it's
Like
like instead
pride
of
needs to come from within. I'm like,
yeah, like
oh, that one
yeah.
feels like a little bit of a reach to me. I don't
I
know.
know. I my daughter showed
Can we
me a
do both?
picture she did, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so proud of you." And then I looked at her, I was like, "I mean, are you
You
proud of yourself?"
right. That's what's important here. I'm like, okay, a lot of the stuff is super helpful. I will say, I'm like, and I try to do the gentle parenting
I
as
know, me
much
too.
as possible, but I'm like, oh God, I think we're reaching with some of
Yeah.
these things these days. It's a lot.
I
It's
know,
a
you
lot.
have to sift through it and
Yeah.
take what feels
Take what
good and
works.
leave
Yeah.
what doesn't.
Yes.
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 But even in that, like, how many times have we heard people say that before? How many times have we told ourselves that? But there are times for me at least, especially in like a new development phase with the kids, that like something will come up and be like, I still question myself sometimes of what if did I discard the wrong thing?
Yeah.
Like, so
Yep.
it's well intentioned, but it's overwhelming.
It's
I
overwhelming.
agree.
It's
Yeah.
just such, I mean, society just like has a hold on new moms, and like we know they're going through it right now and trying to figure this out. Let's like overload them with all this stuff they need to be doing. And,
Mhm.
then they'll all internalize all of that and feel such guilt if they're not doing it.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Anything about before I want to move on to one last piece with you, but before I do, is there anything about being a twin mom that you wish people would just like stop asking you about, or just I feel like there's like a thing happen whether you have like one kid or you have twins, like there's all these like stereotypes that go into
Yeah.
it. Like I don't know, anything that you wish people understood more about being a twin mom, or do people just like overanalyze twin moms too much? Like what I don't know. Like
Yeah, it's really different having twins, I will say. It's so funny because when I had my daughter and I was so overwhelmed with, being a mom, I can't even tell you how many times I said like, "Oh my God, thank God I don't have twins." Like I must have said that once a week when I, had my first. So that came back to get me. Um, and just I can't tell you how many times I'm stopped in a store like, you got your hands full, and I'm just like,
I
thank
know.
you, like not helpful. But
Yeah.
yeah, people, I get asked so many like weird questions about twins. First off, people ask me all the time, like, are they natural? And I'm like, would you ever ask anyone if,
What?
oh, like, did I have IVF? Is always people's like first question
Oh
to me.
my
And I'm
God.
like, I didn't, but it's like none of your business. And would you ever ask someone like with one child, hey, is that baby natural? Like, who
No.
cares?
Oh my God.
It's
And
so
what a
weird.
weird, those words are just weird.
Super
Is
weird.
it
Like, what do you mean
natural? Like,
natural?
what do
It's
you
a
mean? Of
child.
course it's
Of course.
natural.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So that's bizarre. And then people be like, which one's the shy one? And I'm like, oh, let's
Oh,
not like throw
yeah.
like labels on like 3-year-olds. Like they're
Yeah.
both three, they're developing, they're super different. And just for me, it's been hard though not to compare them.
Mm,
And I think I don't ever want to compare my kids. I look at my brothers and I, we're all super different, have really different skill sets. And I don't mean it in that sense, but you get more when you have two the exact same age. It's so much easier to think, okay, he's walking, he's doing
uh,
this. Why is he, you know, and
yeah.
especially same
Like
sex,
the
same age,
milestone
the
things. Yeah.
milestones. And then, okay, even now that they're three and out of that real like milestone time, I'm
Hmm.
still like, you still feel yourself doing it and you're like, oh my God, I need to stop doing that. But when other
It's hard.
people compare them, I'm like, please stop comparing the two of them. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But I know it's natural because I'm doing it inside sometimes and shutting it down. So it's natural for other people to do that. But when they do it to me, I get kind of defensive. Like my
Yeah.
boys are super different. So I just don't ever want, them to feel like, oh, this is the quiet one, this is the loud one, this is the outgoing, I
Hmm.
don't ever
Hmm.
want them to have those labels
Yeah.
projected on them. So I think, yeah, just stop commenting on other people's kids in
Yeah.
general. Like,
Yeah. I was
unless
just
it's
gonna
something
say,
nice,
yeah.
wow, they're, so kind. Let's just
Yeah.
stop
Yeah.
talking about other people's kids.
Yeah. I mean, everything you said could be applied to any kid, really.
Yeah,
I
right.
think it just happens more, I'm sure, for twins. But yeah, yep, let's just leave it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So the last kind of thing I want to talk to you about is sort of just I have in next month I am airing a series of shows with experts that we're talking about the connection between mental health and productivity, mental health and I'm kind of tying it in together with ambition and just sort of saying like using my own experience from career prior to kids to now doing this show and just seeing how much what I do here impacts my mental health in a sometimes a very healthy, positive way, and sometimes in a not so positive way
Right.
when a show doesn't do well or an Instagram post doesn't do well and I've spent hours on it or something like that. And I guess just your experience as an entrepreneur, as a mom, as a woman in business, is there anything that you, looking back, would have said to the you who started this as it relates to like, I don't know, just keeping yourself going? Like, I'm just talk to me, talk to the moms out there who want to start a business, who are starting a business, who are just maybe having to start over in careers post pandemic. Like you did it. What's the advice? What comes to mind?
Um, I think, well, the most important thing is if you want to start a career, I think there's pressure now from both ends of like being a stay-at-home mom versus you need to do something for yourself. So I think that has to be an internal question, first of all, is if
Mm,
you are happy, fulfilled, and don't need the financial help, being a stay-at-home mom is fantastic. And you can live a completely fulfilled life doing that as your job. So I think it's really important not to feel the need to do something else unless
yeah,
it's
great
A,
point.
financial, or B, you really want it.
Hmm.
So that's the first thing, is never do something just because you feel like you have to or it's the right thing to do. If you need the money, or if you feel like, wow, I need something outside of motherhood to identify with, then absolutely do that, but make sure it's the right choice for you. um but yeah, it's possible, and I think there's just always a way to work around your own schedule, work around your own hurdles. If it's something that you really want, my design business started out being just virtual because that's what worked for me while I was overseas. But I think just figuring out what your skill set is, what you're passionate about, And just in today's world, there's such a way to monetize anything that you're good at, but
Mhm.
just making it something, that works for you and that works for your schedule. But most importantly, doing it because it's something that you love and something that you want to do. They're just the comparison game is so crazy with social media, and you're seeing all these other women. I'm seeing other moms, I'm seeing other designers, and I'm like, wow, they're doing this. Like, should I be doing this? And I sit down, and I'm like, no, that doesn't work with my
Yeah.
goals. That doesn't work with my life. Why do I feel like I'm supposed to be doing that?
Yeah.
Where I think with women in general, we're instilled so young to like compete with one another. Like the jealousy, the comparisons are almost forced upon us like so young.
Mhm.
And I'm at a point now where I I just want to uplift other women. I want to support them. I'm not looking or worried about who's doing more, making more, looks better than me. But letting go of comparing yourself to other women has been a game changer for me,
Mhm.
both in my professional life, my personal life, with motherhood. You're never comparing apples to apples. We all are in such different situations. So someone that I'm looking at on Instagram who looks like they, have it together, they're making a ton of money themselves, their kids are happy and well behaved, and I'm like, okay, but their husband might be around, or they
Mhm.
might have longer childcare options. Just like I get, messages from people on my Instagram saying, "Oh my God, I can't believe what you do with your husband working and how you do it." And I'm like, listen, my kids are in school, or your kids in, like, there's just
Yeah.
so many factors. My kids' personalities are different than your kids' personalities,
Right.
even comparing one kid to one kid, you could have a, more laid back child who's a lot easier to be, there's
Right.
so many factors that it's never fair to pull out your phone and compare yourself to anyone, because you're never on the same playing field. So it's just not helpful to you, and it's not fair to you, and it's a really freeing experience to let that go. And just, if you see another woman that's doing something you wish you were doing, wish them well and drop that right there and move on, and maybe throw yourself a compliment of like, wow, but you know what, I did this today.
Yeah.
So yeah, letting go of that comparison has been huge for me, and both professionally and personally. And just do your best, do what works for you, for your family. And I saw a thing recently that was like, what would you be doing if it wasn't for social media? Like, how would you change your job? And I'm like, oh my God, are we really like doing jobs for social media? Like,
Mhm.
no, who cares what everyone else thinks, what they're looking at? Your happiness at the end of the day needs to come from within. Your self-worth should not be dependent upon what you're doing better than someone else.
Mhm. Mhm. I'm hearing what I'm hearing is critical, and I know from my own experience more recently too is not underestimating the absolute need for that self-reflection time and
Right.
that sort of time to catch yourself and really be self-aware,
Yep.
and I think it's a great point of before you get into a business or start an Instagram account or start a podcast, like, do I want to, or do I
Right.
feel like I'm seeing all these other people doing it and I could do it too. Like, there's also like the whole idea of we don't need to like monetize every hobby,
Yep.
like
Right.
if you like doing something and even if you want to share it on social media, that's great. That doesn't mean you have to monetize it.
Right.
Um and the one other thing that came to mind as you were talking, as far as doing what works for you, doing what works for your family. You mentioned that your business started all virtual because that's what works. I sometimes grapple with what works versus what I want. Like I think that has a lot to do with like with patience
Yeah.
and sort of reality acceptance. But any thoughts on that? Like when you started the virtual, was it like this is fantastic and I'm loving this, and then it organically grew, or was it like I'm starting this virtual and I can't wait until I can like do more? Because that's
I
how
would
I
say,
feel a
yeah,
little
it
bit,
started off more natural of like I just enjoyed it, and it was a way for me to get my foot in the door and build a portfolio. And then eventually it got to the point of like, wow, I know if I was like in the States right now, my business could be
Mm,
tenfold what it is right now.
hmm.
But it did start as I was just excited to do something.
Yeah.
Make a little bit of money, grow a portfolio, but then it did get to a point where it was more like, okay, I'm ready to kind of take the leap
Yeah. Like
and do
giddy
something
up.
else. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. Struggling with, what you need to do at the time. And I think it's important too. It's okay if you start something just to get your foot in the door and to get started. It doesn't have to be your dream
Yeah.
anything right away. And
Yeah.
we are so often want that instant gratification of I want this perfect job, but
Hmm.
sometimes we have to take steps to get there, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. It has to fit your life right now in order, for it to be a reality. But you can have bigger dreams where, okay, I've got to do this for a couple of years, then I'm going to take this step. I think as long as it's, moving in that path, that it's okay, but it doesn't have to be your perfect plan right
Yeah.
off the bat.
I have a reminder on my little cork board here. It says launch fast, adjust later,
Yeah,
because I could sit in the perfecting phase
right.
of anything, whether it was like this podcast as a whole or any new thing I want to do within the show. It's like I'll sit there and I will like dot every single I and cross every single T and
Yeah.
redo the I's and T's until I'm blue in the face and it's like just do it.
Right.
Just get out of
Yep.
your head.
Just go out there and do it.
Yeah.
Like, yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, McCall, is there anything based on our conversation today that is still perhaps lingering on your heart, mind, soul? Anything that you want to leave people with before we sign off today?
Yeah, I think just the biggest thing is women knowing, which I think they get this from your show in general 100 times over every episode, but just knowing there's help out there, there's resources out there, and it is not a prerequisite to motherhood to feel terrible and to have that anxiety, that crippling. I mean, of course, we're all going to be anxious and worried about our children. That doesn't mean you have any mental health problems. But if you feel that debilitating, crippling
Mhm.
anxiety, after giving birth, it's normal, but it's normal in the sense of it happens to a lot of us, but not normal in the sense of ignore it and move on. Like
Yeah.
there's resources out there, there's help, and it's something I didn't do or utilize, but something that could have made such a massive difference kind of in that fifth trimester. So just realizing that it's normal. Don't feel like you're insane,
Nothing
and
wrong with you.
there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with you, but there's help available to you.
Mhm. Boom. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, McCall, thank you so much for being here. It was so nice learning more about you and your story, and I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, you're wonderful, and you can always call me up. I'm always here to listen to anyone complain about motherhood or kids, and I'll absolutely listen. So feel free to
Thank
give me a
you.
call next time.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, right? Okay, so the first point I want to reiterate is about McCall sharing her struggles with postpartum depression and anxiety, a struggle she initially didn't recognize. She reminded you, and now I'm going to do the same. It's okay to get help. Even if you're not sure how significant your struggle is, there is help available for varying degrees of struggle. Please get the help you need. Talk to a friend, talk to a mentor, talk to a coach, talk to a therapist, talk to your doctor. I saw something recently about how I have to find the creator because it was so good, but it was about how we need to stop telling mothers that it, quote unquote, takes a village. But what we really need to be telling mothers is that the village isn't free. Yes, it's true. What used to be this village of community and women and your neighbors and your family just being around and with you while you're raising your children is now something that we have to pay for. And that is okay, I guess, because it just is what it is. And so rather than telling mothers to, rely on their village, it's plan financially to spend money on resources, babysitters, therapists, coaches, pelvic floor therapists, whatever you need to take care of yourself within your means. Start thinking about it. If you're pregnant, start thinking about it, start budgeting it out. It's become a fact of life that our villages very often, I'd even go as far to say more often than not, aren't free anymore. And so that is something that we need to think about and be planning for and be telling people. So the second thing I want to talk about is McCall's life overseas. Imagine moving to a new country every year. That was her life for a decade. You know, the highs and lows of building a community abroad, overcoming language barriers, and dealing with the isolation. I can not even imagine how challenging. And so truthfully, it does help put in perspective for me how really quite simple it is for me to put myself out there at my local playground and just say hi to another mom, right? And you've heard me talk about how hard this is for me on the show. And I have to say, I've come a long way. I can talk to moms on the playground, at the playground now. I can do that. But, you know, now there's a next level. Now there's the actual getting together and the coffee and the play dates and all the things. And when I consider how she did that abroad and or the times where it really wasn't available to her, it really gives me perspective on how available it is to me right now, and that I can do it if I really just make the effort. Oh, man. All right. And lastly, I want to mention the balancing act that McCall talked about as far as her responsibilities as a mother, a wife, an entrepreneur. She emphasized the importance of outsourcing tasks, having ongoing conversations about roles and responsibilities with her husband, and the need for casual, kind of just easy interactions and relationships with other moms. It is goals. It is what we're all striving for. I love it so much. It was so refreshing to hear a mom share a really positive story with some total realness involved, you know, like it's some awesome. So thank you, McCall, for telling your story, for being who you are. And I'll go back to what her bio said in the intro, being an underpaid assistant to her toddlers. I just love it so much. Thank you. And thank you for listening. I'll get you next time. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Sass Says is a production of Luann Nigara, Inc. This podcast is meant to be educational and not meant to replace professional therapy or professional medical attention. To learn more about today's show and what's new in my world, head over to sasssays.com. Thanks so much. Talk later.